and welcome back to Forgotten Hollywood in my living room. So, I would like to apologize in advance if you hear any background noise. My son is fighting sleep, and I don't know if you can hear him, but he's having an epic quest with his toys. But speaking of epic quests, I would like to talk about the most expensive fan fiction ever made, The Rings of Power, or as I like to call it, The Rings of Prime. There's visual aspects that are jarring, there's character aspects that are jarring, there's plot points that are jarring, and it just doesn't feel like the world Tolkien created. There were some things that I was pleasantly surprised by, and I will go over those too. But let's start with where they messed up. And I'm going to limit myself to a few points so that I'm not here all night. So the first thing is the visual cues that were just off. The most glaring one to me that just got to me the whole time I was watching it, could not figure out how this happened, is virtually all the male elves, not just Elrond, but like all of the male elves have short hair. You'd think with $1 billion budget they would be able to afford wigs. And not just short hair, but like what makes me think of like pop singer hair. They look like they should be on Hairspray. Just weird because Tolkien was pretty clear on what elves look like. And Peter Jackson, he paid attention to that. And now they didn't all have to be blonde. They all had long hair. They were all tall and slender. That's how the elves are described, not in Rings of Power. Beyond the visual elements being off, was the lack of plot development. And it seems to be a trend these days that they have to build tension by not telling you anything. Previous videos I've talked about this problem with Star Wars. It takes forever for you to learn anything about the characters. This is not the case in past movies. You watch movies made in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, things that the characters do and say in the first 2 minutes tell you everything you need to know about them. You know, the plot development it happens much faster. Everything's at a slow pace. Honestly, it causes me to just check out. By the time I got to the end of the second episode, which ends in a cliffhanger, by the way, I was like, who's that? Oh, I don't care. There's nothing that has happened that makes me care about these people. Except a couple, but I will get to them later. There's really a lack of setup for any of the characters except Galadriel. When it introduces the Harfoots, all you get is some hunters going, "Oh, what was that sound? It's probably a Harfoot. We better get going." Okay, what's the Harfoot? Are you scared of the Harfoot? Do you not care about the Harfoot? What's the Harfoot to you? They almost made them sound like gremlins in just the way that the tone and everything. And then you see them and they're just there. I'm not really getting who they are. I know that they migrate because they talked about the migration, which was also somewhat confusing because something happened and they're like, oh, what about the festival? We can't migrate yet. We have the festival. And then it looked like they were setting up for the festival, or what I thought was setting up for the festival. Someone is injured and they're like, oh, we can't migrate because they got injured. We have to migrate. What about the festival? Aren't you having a festival? I'm just really confused right now. I don't know what's going on with your schedule or how things work really at all with the Harfoots. There is one Harfoot that I really liked, and I will get to them in a minute when I go over the things that are not so bad about the show. Beyond the Harfoots, you have the human village with the elf garrison. Best I can tell, at one point in this village's history, they fought on the wrong side of the war. I don't know how long ago this was. I don't really know like what happened with that. The elves are watching over the land, but they don't like the humans. So are they watching over the land to protect it from the humans, or Are they watching over the humans too, whether they want them there or not? It's just confusing. I honestly, I have no idea what's going on. It's not good writing. When you have good writing, you know who the players are. You know what the stakes are. And usually you know it pretty early on. Um, I remember watching a movie with my husband. I don't recall which one, but it took about 40 minutes to set up the situation in an hour and a half long movie. Like sitting here going, wait. Now we're out of the setup? It just finished the setup? We've been watching this for how long? And people wonder why I don't like modern movies. You watch old movies and you know everything that's going on from the beginning. You get exposition. Exposition is when you get the explanation of what is going on. Find out the setting, you find out the characters, you find out where things are going, where they came from, what direction we're headed in, and who's getting us there. That's exposition, and it can be done very creatively. 1978 Superman. First, it sets up the villains with the trial sequence. Then it moves on to the conversation with Jor-El, and the planet is going to be destroyed. We don't have time. We need to evacuate. And the council's like, no, and you can't leave because that will start a panic. And so he promises he will not leave, and he promises his wife will not leave. And then he sends his only son to Earth to save him from the destruction of the planet. A well-done movie or TV show will tell you in the first 10-15 minutes who the players are, what's going on, and how we got to the point where we're at. 2 episodes in of The Rings of Power, and I barely know any of that. Now, there were 2 characters that they got wrong that just, more than anyone else, pull me out of the story. The first is Elrond. It's probably not fair of me to compare this younger actor with Hugo Weaving, but you gotta admit that is a mental reference for a lot of people. However, even putting Hugo Weaving aside, you have this short-haired elf. He's a politician, and she tells him he's a good politician. He gets praised for his work, apparently as a politician. And then he is promptly sent to work with the greatest craftsman in the realm. Picture a car company, and the president brings this guy in and says, "You are our top salesperson. You have sold more cars than anyone else in our company, and you are just doing an amazing job. So we're going to reward you. You are going to go work with our top mechanic." Why? What? Top politician, craftsman. Is there a reason that the top craftsman needs a politician? Or are you just wanting him to expand his skill set? The last of the people drove me up the wall from the very start is Galadriel the Amazing. She's truly amazing because she can do anything by herself. She needs no people, but she insists on going with other people for reasons that I don't understand. Watch my video on a Mary Sue to see why that just makes her boring and annoying and just insufferable. I'm not going to go into everything that Galadriel does because, again, I don't want to be here all night. So I will just touch a few highlights. The first highlight, Galadriel as a child. Now, it shows her as a child doing this sort of origami thing, making a boat. But when she puts the boat in the waters, it expands and it becomes this paper swan sailing down the stream until the bully children throw rocks at it and sink it. An adult elf showed up, said nothing to the children who were bullying Galadriel, even though it was her brother, and he had, the personal interest of seeing his sister bullied. He had the authority to say something to the children, but he's just like, nah, it's fine. And then he gives her the strangest bit of advice I've ever heard in my life. He says, do you know the difference between a boat and a stone? A stone is always looking down into the darkness, and that's why it sinks, and the boat is always looking up into the lights, and that's why it floats. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember his exact wording. That's essentially what he said. And I'm sitting here going, what? What does that have to do with anything? Like, how does are you telling her to float above the bullies? Is this advice for later, for the troubles that you can't possibly know she's going to run into because the war hasn't started yet? I don't know. And he tells her, I won't always be here to offer you advice. And she says, you won't? And I'm like, good answer. Elves just naturally keep living. Unless he's planning ahead that he's going to be murdered by someone, he would assume he was going to be there for her indefinitely. It's not like you have a finite lifespan. There's one of the many issues with the plot of this show. But then Galadriel grows up, and she loses her brother, who predicted his death, I don't know how many hundreds of years before it happened. And then his vow becomes mine, and so she starts obsessively leading troops to go chase down the one responsible for her brother's death. Her men are pushed to the brink. They want to go home. They're not happy. Their term was up. Like, they weren't even supposed to still be out there, but she's like, we keep going. We fight. We're going to find this guy. And they're like, no, we're going home. She's apparently a horrible leader because her men just mutinied and were like, we're leaving. We're done. Let's go. And then she went with them and didn't just continue on her own, which, from what I could tell, she could have done because she's Galadriel the Amazing that can kill a snow troll that was tossing around her men like they were rag dolls. But she can fight it single-handed, kill it, and not even break a sweat or take a hit. For the record, Aragorn couldn't do that. Legolas couldn't do that. Gandalf couldn't do that. Gimli couldn't do that. Boromir couldn't do that. None of them could do it. But Galadriel can, because she is Galadriel the Amazing, who can do anything. The most ridiculous feat of Galadriel the Amazing is that she's on a boat going to the Undying Lands. She doesn't want to go. And at the last minute, she takes her brother's dagger and she jumps over the side of the boat. And I remember watching this scene with my husband, and he's like, well, what now? She's in the middle of nowhere. And I said, she is Galadriel the Amazing. She will make it. And he's like, it's hundreds of miles of open ocean. And I'm like, she can do it because she's Galadriel the Amazing. She can do anything. But she makes it to a raft. Shipwreck survivors who let her on, and then they get attacked, and one of the shipwreck survivors throws her overboard for reasons that I didn't quite understand. Maybe they were hoping that the thing that was attacking them would go after her, but she just starts swimming away, and the thing attacking the raft keeps attacking the raft and eating the people there, and just ignores Galadriel because she has plot armor. And then sometime later, after the thing has stopped attacking and eating the people, there is the raft, or what's left of it, and one guy who then lets Galadriel onto the raft with him. And to illustrate how bad this is, there's a scene where Galadriel is talking to this guy on the raft with her, and she seems to have taken over his raft, and there's a post coming out of the raft, and there's a rope on it. And she loops another rope from the center of the raft to the loop and tugs on it as if it's doing something. I was looking at that going, there's no sail, and it's too stationary to be a rudder. What is she doing? But it was like they had to have her doing something. So they had her doing this useless task, just repeatedly tugging on this rope. She could have been coiling the ropes, she could have been checking the supplies, she could have been doing any number of things. But they have her tugging on the rope to make it look like she's sailing the raft that's just floating. Now I will move on to the things that were not so bad. The first thing I will mention, probably favorite character whole show is Princess Disa, the dwarf princess. She had this bubbly personality. She was believable. She was likable. Really, the whole dwarf family, with Durin and Disa, and the little children that you don't really see very well because they're inside of these big stone heads and running around. And she's scolding them, saying, "You should be in bed." I think I related to her because I'm a mother of multiple children, and I have to go chasing them around. And what are you doing? What are you getting into? And so it's like I could relate. I could relate to her. I could relate to her situation, and her being excited to meet her husband's friend and wants to serve him dinner, and his friend being Elrond, who was the driest part of that entire scene. But Disa, she was played by Sophia Nomvetti, I think is how you say her name. And she was so good. It was probably, both episodes combined, that her scenes were probably the best of the entire show. I could get that they were a married couple, that they had children, that they were in love. I could see that. I could get that. It worked. We know who these people are. We know how they met. We know how they fell in love so fast. We know how they courted, that they got married, that they had children. If you give us characters that we have background on, that we know about, that we can see their personalities, that we can see what they do, they don't have to be on the screen very long to be just endearing. And I just love Disa. The other one I like, and he probably got less screen time than Disa, um, is Nori's dad. I don't actually recall his name because I don't think his name is said more than once or twice. But he was also likable. Every time he was on the screen, he was the most likable of the Harfoots. He was supportive of Nori. It's almost like he wanted to support her, but he didn't want to upset his wife, who wasn't really supportive of what she was doing. So he's sort of secretly supporting her, but you're not supposed to go into the farm. Did you have fun though? Not exact lines, but it's that kind of thing where he's just likable. You care about him. And outside of Princess Disa and Nori's dad and the dwarf kids, there really wasn't many people I cared about. The dwarves were probably the highlight of all the cultures. You see their city, they talk a little bit about their history, they talk about what they're doing. They give exposition. What a concept! Who do we like, who do we not like, and where are we going? That's all I need. The last thing I want to say about this is probably the worst offense of the entire show. And that is the fact that they originally set to air on September 2nd. Now, when you want to honor someone, air something on their birthday, you air something on an anniversary of something great that they did. They originally set this to air on the 49th anniversary of Tolkien's death. So they are taking his legacy, changing it to make it what they want, and then presenting it to the world on the anniversary of the day he died. I think that they figured out that this looked really, really bad because they changed the date from September 2nd to September 1st. Not that that makes it any better, but that's what they did. And I think that that says a lot about how little these people care about the legacy. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. It really helps out. And be sure to click the bell for notifications because YouTube doesn't always tell people when things are up. If there's any other thing that you would like me to address, I'm happy to do it. If there's a show you'd like me to review or a movie you'd like my take on, or if you would like me to continue to discuss the Rings of Power, let me know. I'm happy to do it. Just tell me what you want me to do. Tell me what you want to hear, and I will catch up with you next time.